I guess I can take off these keys. All right. Let me. All righty. So it looks like we'll go ahead and get started. It's 4 o'clock, and I know at 5:30 is when Reagan has their TK Kinder meet and greet, right? Yeah. So we'll kind of try and get you guys out of here by then. So we'll go ahead and start with introductions. Thank you guys for coming. My name is Emily Flores. I'm a district school psychologist here with Sanger Unified. I also have, are we good to go? Okay. Personally, I have a 2.5-year-old and a 2-year-old and a 4.5-year-old. She's going to be in TK, so kind of right in the same, stage of life as you guys are, personally. So we'll go ahead and introduce our other presenters. We kind of have a big team here with kind of a broad range of expertise so that we can just provide as much information to you guys as possible. So.
Hi, everyone. My name is Amy Alarcon. I'm a school psychologist intern at Sequoia Elementary.
My name is Angelina Duarte, and I am a board-certified behavior analyst, and I am a behavior consult for Sanger Unified here.
I'm Jared Fab. I'm a BCBA intern for Sanger Unified. We work with the top team. We're contracted with Sanger Unified, but heavily involved with the district.
I'm Edith Holt, and I am the Health Services Program Coordinator for Sanger Unified, and have been a school nurse with the district since 2016.
Perfect. Okay. So we'll go ahead and just kind of start us off with just kind of some developmental milestones and kind of talking about that. If you have not already, I think most everybody, but there's a sign-in sheet over there, and then there is also a little flyer for you to grab or form that you can kind of take your own notes on. But just through the agenda for today, like I said, we're going to just kind of go over developmental milestones as well as any red flags, what to look for, and what you can do if you do have concerns for your child. And then just in general, going over promoting healthy development for our kiddos. Again, what to do if we have concerns. And then our BCBA team will go over potty training and all the tips and tricks. And then Mrs. Bolt will go over immunization information. And then hopefully we'll have some time at the end as well to go over any questions that you guys might have. Like I said, there is a developmental wheel if you haven't grabbed that already. Again, just so you can kind of take note for yourself of anything that stands out to you or any follow-ups that you want. And just before we kind of jump into what would be typical developmental milestones, I do just want to highlight that it really does start out with these foundational pieces, right? Of having a balanced meal, for ourselves as well as for our kiddos. It's critical for them to get nutritious meals and getting the proper nutrition so that they can thrive and develop in a healthy way. Same thing, the middle one is just play and the importance of play, which we'll go over later on in the presentation. But that helps just to set a foundation as well, a solid foundation, and then sleep. Right, so over here just kind of goes over how much sleep we need as we go through different stages in life. So looking at, at preschool, that 3 to 5 year range, our kiddos do need that 11 to 13 hours of sleep, right? And so those are just the foundations that set our kids up for success for a healthy development. And like I said, we'll go over more details later on in the presentation. As we get into developmental milestones, really quickly, just so we can kind of cut out the pieces that are not relevant for you guys. Does anybody have like a 0 to 1-year-old? So we'll skip that. Any 1 to 2-year-olds? 3 to 4? Okay, so we'll kind of go from kind of that 3 and up, and we'll skip over some of the slides. So I'll just kind of skip through those. We'll stick to the ones that are relevant to you folks that are here today, and kind of move through that quickly. Again, before we go over developmental milestones, just a word of caution, right? Sometimes when we go through these things, it can be really nerve-wracking if your child's not meeting exactly, something that is noted to be part of that developmental range. So, I just want to have a disclaimer in here that development, across different age spans, really there's a huge variability in as far as what's considered typical and normal, right? And some kids might be excelled in one area and just might be a little bit slower to develop in other areas. You know, for a lot of kids, those differences or some of those delays will be temporary, and others it might persist, right? And there aren't specific indicators at this point in age and in the early years that will tell us which kids might catch up and which ones won't. And so just kind of a disclaimer before we go into that, the actual milestones. And again, we'll talk about resources, but if you have any concerns, you know, it would be just bringing those up with your pediatrician. So like I said, we'll kind of skip through some of these really early year pieces. We will be going over kind of the four main domains. So, you know, the fine and gross motor skills, cognitive development, communication, and then social emotional development. And I do want to just hit on social emotional development. You know, this is critical and important for our kids to have these skills because it really lays the foundation for them to be able to access and be a contributing kind of member within a whole classroom, right? So it's important for learning. Also, social emotional development kind of includes, but is not limited to, growth and self-awareness, right? So their likes and their awareness about what their likes and dislikes are, their awareness of their emotions, all of those pieces go into self-awareness, right? Self-regulation is kind of their ability to regulate their own emotions. Cooperation, obviously, is their ability to get along with others in kind of that cooperative learning environment. You know, you guys will see as you guys enter in with your kiddos next year and kind of their entire educational career, there's going to be a lot of group work, a lot of collaboration, a lot of them having to get along with others, right? And then just that personal responsibility as well in that discipline. And so, again, social emotional development also is their social emotional understanding, interacting, again, with peers and group participation. Like I said, that's such a big component that's embedded in education nowadays. And then their initiative to learning, right? So their engagement and their exploration in their learning environment is covered through social emotional development, as well as just those attachments, right? To caregivers, to other close relationships, their ability to form good relationships with others around them. All of the components that kind of go into social emotional development. So again, we'll skip through and just jump to kind of that 4 to 5 year range in all of these areas. So jumping then into kind of fine and gross motor development for 3 and 4 year olds. So gross motor, when we're talking about gross motor, we're talking about our big muscles and those big movements. So kind of those whole body movements. So in regards to that, we would expect that they can kind of run and navigate an obstacle, you know, walk on a line, right? So kind of that heel to toe, walk on a line, and balance on one foot, being able to now hop on one foot, kind of pushing, you know, driving kind of a wheeled toy or car, starting to ride a tricycle and kind of get those coordinated movements, as well as using a slide independently, and then like throwing a ball overhead, as well as being able to start to pull in those coordinated movements and be able to catch a ball as well that bounces towards them. Fine motor, when we're talking about that, we're talking about small motor movements. And so for that, it would be being able to stack at least 9 blocks, being able to like drive nails and pegs, so those little peg boards, and just being able to, right, get those small little clogs into the peg boards, copying a circle as well as imitating a cross, right? So we're getting more coordinated with those movements, manipulating clay, so, you know, building with Play-Doh, for example, experimenting with grasp as well as body position, using a variety of tools, right? So their grasp with like a pencil and different motor movements are kind of starting to come around, and then writing using scribbles. So they're starting to try and, you know, write. Okay. For communication in that 3 to 4 year range, you know, I know we didn't go through those early years, but we really see language explode, you know, from that 2 to 4 year range. And so we do see that they can understand as well as use language to communicate with others effectively. They have a vocabulary of nearly 1,000 words, right? So this is a little human that can communicate their wants and needs with us, right? As I'm sure you guys are seeing with your kids. They're able to use longer and more complex sentences. So you'll see two phrases, be able to link concepts together. You've got them using and but in order to form full sentences and ideas. You would see that their sentence length kind of increases to at least 4 to 5 words, right? We're getting away from, need go potty to I need to go to the bathroom, please. Being able to kind of link those together. They might be able to tell you a story. Maybe you guys read a short story at night, and they're now able to kind of tell you the gist of that story. Name at least one color, and start to have some concept of time, right? So yesterday, summer, lunchtime, tonight, big, little. And then being able to obey basic requests, okay? And so when we talk about communication as well, it does consist of receptive language, which is what they can understand, as well as expressive language of what they're actually able to communicate and tell you. So that's kind of how communication is broken up. And then there's articulation as well, which is just how well can you understand them. For cognitive development, for that 3 to 4 year range, this is where we would start to see them recognize and match colors. And this says at least 6 colors, intentionally stack blocks or rings in order of size, right? So they're not just stacking with that fine motor skill, but they're actually seeing that this one's bigger than that one, and they're able to put it in the appropriate order. Draw something somewhat recognizable picture that's meaningful to the child, right? So they might draw some circles like this and say, this is a flower, or this is mommy and daddy and me, and so starting to kind of conceptualize and try and draw those out. Asking questions for information. This is the why phase, why this, why that? Lots of answering questions in this time frame. So why and how. They want to know how things work, right? They're really interested in the world around them. They've increased their understanding of concepts, as far as grouping of objects, the whole part, as well as increasing awareness of past and present, right? So they might have a bigger concept then of, well, that happened yesterday. Oh, where are we going tomorrow? And that type of thing. And then beginning to recognize print conventions and understanding that print carries meaning, right? So within the book, they know that those words are tied to what you're reading, and that begins to make sense for them. And then being able to begin to recognize alphabet letters. Okay, for social emotional development for our 3 to 4 year olds, we would expect that they can interact easily with peers in shared activities, right? So that kind of 2-year range, we know that they can play with others, but they don't know how to share at that point. We do start to see in this 3 to 4 year range, they can have more of that cooperative play, right? They might share toys and then take turns with assistance. That doesn't mean that it's not supervised. You might still need to be giving them ideas, right? I know right now my daughter will be like, no, Rowan, don't take that. And it's well, Colby, how can we figure this out? Do you think you can take a turn and then he can? Oh yeah, okay, right? So helping them navigate those situations, but they're okay with sharing toys. Begin dramatic play, where they're acting out whole scenes, right? We really see them start to get into character and have that pretend play. They'll participate in group activities. You can see that they're beginning to understand and cooperate with group rules. So a game of tag, maybe, or carpet time. That'll be a huge thing for all of our TK Kinder kiddos next year. And then demonstrating concern for others and people in distress, right? So they see somebody crying, they might go and check on them and say, oh, what's wrong? Why are you crying? So kind of having that understanding and that empathy, right? And building that empathy and showing that they're building empathy. We would expect that they are gonna seek support from primary teachers and caregivers, right? So if they need help, they know to go find a trusted adult that can help them. And then it's still typical for them to have a short attention span. We do see that they learn through observing and imitating adults. But again, they are very easily distracted. For early years, we kind of expect them to have attention span equal to the number of years that they are, right? So a 3-year-old, we'd expect about a 3-minute attention span. That's pretty typical. 4-year-old, at least 4 minutes of attention, sustained attention. That's developmentally appropriate. That's why there's a lot of moving parts and activities and stations and, right, engagement with our early years. So now going into the 4 and 5-year range, for gross motor, again, those big muscle movements, we would expect them to be able to walk backward, heel to toe, and be able to, again, just that next level of development with balance. Jump forward 10 times without falling, walking up and down stairs with alternating feet independently, so not necessarily needing to like hold onto a rail anymore and use that for support, and then be able to do like a somersault. For fine motor skills, we would expect them to be able to like cut on a line continuously, so just kind of being able to cut a straight line. Copy both a cross as well as a square, right? So those movements that have more of those edges where they need better motor control. Adjust their grasp and body, so right when they are writing, that they can shift themselves to make sure that they're writing appropriately. And then be able to start printing letters or letter-like shapes, right? So approximations towards being able to write letters. And I would say with the motor skills too, they get so much practice with that with TK Kinder. So if there are any challenges with that, they are gonna get a ton of practice with that. So if they have not gotten it already with you guys. In the area of communication, we see that they're able to use language to communicate both familiar and unfamiliar adults, right? So even being able to walk up to somebody that's unfamiliar, they should be able to communicate kind of their wants and needs, right? We should be out of the phase of like, only mom can understand your kid, right? And what they're requesting. And then increasing the complex sentences, again, with 2 to 3 phrases, 3 to 4 concepts to communicate an idea, being able to use past tense correctly. So I went, we walked, and then their vocabulary has jumped from that like 1,000 words to 1,500 words. They should be able to point out a variety of colors and identify a variety of colors, as well as now identifying also some shapes and being able to tell you what they are, right? So the communication, either you say them and they can point them out and identify them, or them also being able to expressively tell you what something is when you point to it. Kind of understand more of like in the morning, next, noontime, right? It's a little bit more of an abstract concept, but they're able to kind of start to understand those different time references. And then it can speak in imaginary conditions. So, I really hope that I can get dessert after dinner and just kind of, it's my daughter's favorite thing. And then they're asking more complex questions as well. And we're not just asking why and how, but who and why as well. Or continuing to ask the why questions, but adding in like who. Cognitive development-wise, we would see that they can play with words, so they might be able to dictate what they're doing as they're playing. We would see them being able to point and name colors, so that's building in the language piece, but also seeing that cognitive piece develop and expand. Being able to match pictures of familiar objects, so pair them together and know that these two things are the same. Drawing draws, names, and describes recognizable pictures. So maybe a variety of animals or a variety of things, right? They might be able to draw the basic concept, name it, and describe it. They should be able to start counting, even if they're imitating you guys or an adult. They might know their street in town. But obviously, right, if they don't have exposure to these things, they're not gonna learn it, right? So, but with exposure, they should be able to start picking up on these concepts. And then has increased understanding of concepts of function, again, time. Again, their thinking is becoming a little bit more abstract and not quite as concrete with just what's right in front of them. And then their time concepts, right, are also expanding. So no, we're not gonna do that until this weekend. Next week, we're gonna do that next Friday. You have gymnastics on Wednesdays. And then understanding the print is something that's read and has a specific meaning, right? So they're understanding what a book is and kind of what the purpose of the print is. The words on there are what we're reading. And then just continuing to build on their recognition of like the alphabet and letters. Okay. And then finally, the social emotional development for our 4 to 5 year olds. We would see that they're able to play with other children, and they're more active and intentionally cooperative with that play. So again, we're just seeing them expand and become more complex with what their play looks like, right? Dramatic play is closer to reality. They're going to pay more attention to detail, time, space, so they might set the scene a little bit differently. They might really dictate specific details and things within their play. They might compare characteristics with those of others. So they might compare, start noticing their difference between themselves and somebody else, right? I have brown hair, you have blonde hair, and kind of being able to really differentiate and distinguish between themselves and others, and just various characteristics of others. Even labeling, right? Like this student gets in trouble, that makes them, they might not always be the nicest. This person helped me, they're a really nice person. Responding to another's distress and needs with caring, they're more likely to assist, so they're not just maybe gonna go check up, but I'm gonna go get the teacher to come help you now and help problem solve, how to respond to those different situations. Again, participate positively in group settings, so they're able to be inactive and appropriately participate in group settings. And then we see that attention span kind of begin to increase. We still see that they are learning through observing and listening to adults, right? So they're watching whatever's being modeled for them. So that's why it's really important for us to also, show good self-regulation skills ourselves, and good coping skills, sometimes explaining, hey, I'm really frustrated right now, but I'm gonna go take a break, right? And then we'll come back and we'll talk about it, right? That's gonna be modeling for them. They're watching, they're paying attention to how we handle situations as well. And then, really it's through exploring, through play. That's a huge component for that social emotional development. But also noted, we still expect that they have a short attention span, right? Good deal. Any questions about the developmental milestones? Okay, I'll go ahead and hand it over then to Ms. Alarcon, and she'll go through.
Perfect. All right, so the next part of the presentation will be going over some of the red flags. Now that we've gone over, what we're expecting your children or your next student to be at, depending on their age, here's some things that we should look out for, right? So in terms of motor development, we should look out for those problems in either the gross or fine motor coordination. So do they have trouble using those larger muscles in their bodies to make those larger movements? Like, can they alternate their feet when they're hopping or jumping? Do they have trouble using scissors to cut or stringing beads, using those finer skills, or like even holding a pencil with like the pincer grasp? Is that a struggle for them? So that's something we can look out for. Additionally, do they have difficulties with activities of daily living? So in terms of dressing, sure, we want to see, like, can they dress up, but are they putting the clothes backwards or inside out? Do they have trouble fastening snaps, buttons, things like that? Or toileting, do they still need, do they still use Pampers or diapers? Do they still need trouble wiping afterwards? Is there some a struggle even going, to the bathroom to eliminate? And lastly, are they experiencing any struggle with coloring, copying, and drawing? So, and when they're drawing, do they still color way outside of the line? A little bit is still normal. Sometimes I'm still like, I get hard on myself for myself going inside of the line. But are we seeing, is it drastic, more than what it should be for their age? Or do they have troubles imitating a drawing or something that they can see right then and there? In terms of communication, this is where we see that they have not yet met those milestones for language or articulation. So we're seeing that, do they have limited vocabulary in terms of their receptive skills? So is it limited of what they understand? Are we seeing that is also limited of what they can express, their own vocabulary? Are they only saying a few words compared to the 1,000 or more words that they should be saying for their age? Do they have difficulty understanding simple directions? Is it hard for them to understand, go put your toy in the red bin? is that a struggle? You know, it's very, those simple directions. Is their speech monotone or unusual? So we're seeing, you know, if you're having a very excited moment or situation, like you just bought them a new toy and their speech is very flat, you know, there's not changing in any pitch, that's something to look out for. Can you understand them? That's also an important part, is their speech very, their intelligibility very reduced. And you yourself, who spend more time with your child, do you struggle understanding what they're saying? In terms of immature syntax, that's where, you know, they're not following like grammatical rules. So for example, when you would say like the dog runs fast, they say like dog run fast. Or the dog is running fast, they'd say dog run fast. Do they have difficulty rhyming words? So if you do like standard like nursery rhymes, is it even hard for them to pair those rhyming words together? We're also looking at limited interest when interacting with others. So this is like when you would see in a play date or at the park, do they not want to even have parallel play or want to do that cooperative play? Do they also struggle with creating like spontaneous communication, like them trying to initiate a conversation? That's something to look out for too. Thank you. In terms of cognitive development, this is where we're looking at those delays in cognitive and reading skills. So this is one where, for example, they're not demonstrating object permanence. This is where, like if you show them a ball, they see the ball, then you cover the ball. Do they understand that the ball's still, you know, there? We're seeing that they're not making that connection yet. They think it, you know, they disappeared. There's a limited understanding of means-ends relationship. So this is being like if they want a cookie from the cookie jar, they struggle to make the connection of, if I pull this chair, put it on the counter, and I get on the chair, I can get the cookie jar. So we're seeing that struggle. Lack of symbolic play behavior. So this is where they're not really engaging in using random objects to like symbolize something else, like getting a banana and saying that's a telephone. You know, they're not doing that yet. Limited phonological awareness. So this is looking at the rhyming. This is at blending words together, pulling words apart, you know, for their different sounds. We're seeing that there's a slow speed for naming objects and colors, so it might take them a little while to name colors, name different objects. There's minimal interest in print and limited print awareness. So this, for example, are those book skills, those identifying skills of knowing, oh, the story is based on the words that I read on the paper, you know, making those connections is minimal. And then also they have trouble learning their numbers, alphabet, you know, their ABCs and days of the week, those things that will be, you know, that they should be able to be mastering at the time between 4 to 5 years old. In terms of social emotional development, we're seeing here that the child does not show an interest in others. So this is, again, they prefer to be alone. They're not creating, you know, that cooperative play. Even with people that they know, they're not imitating others, so it's not copying what others are saying, copying others' movements, even copying other people's play. They may have difficulty responding to others' emotions. So this is, for example, if they might see another friend hurt or a family member hurt, they're not showing the, oh, are you okay? You know, showing that concern, or also joy. There's more than often tantrums, and you know that's expected. So they're reacting negatively more to situations than should be expected for their age. Again, putting aside, you know, the normal attention span, depending for where they're supposed to be, they're being more inattentive and more distracted than usual. They can be more impulsive, so reacting without thinking, or hyperactive, so it might take them a lot longer to calm down, and we're seeing that throughout the day. So it's not just specific times of the day where you say, oh, at lunchtime, my child, you know, is bouncing off the walls. It's like they're running on a motor. No, we're trying to see, is it prolonged? Is it throughout the day from the time they wake up to the time they go to bed? In addition, they might have really strong reactions to changes in activities or changes in routines. So this is them, for example, if you say, we're going to Walmart, then to grandma's house, and you change the plan, you go, no, we're just going to grandma's house, and they have this very big reaction in the car. That's something you want to look out for. Like, are those not small changes, but changes causing big reactions. And also perseveration. So this is where they're constantly thinking of an idea, and that idea does not leave their mind until, you know, they have a new idea to think about, or until it's completed. So that's also something to look out for. Now play. So play is an important part in any child's life, and especially within these early years, this is part of those foundational skills that sets them up for the rest of their life. Different experts, notable people in media, and you know, scholars have said that play is the work of the child. Play is what, again, like I'm saying, is setting up those foundational skills. And also with Mr. Rogers, you know, play gives children that chance to practice what they're learning, practice what they're seeing, and helps put those skills to, you know, put those skills to practice. Continue. And with the purpose of play, this is where we're seeing, you know, that they can become aware of themselves and aware of others. So this is where they're noticing those emotions, they're noticing how to regulate their own emotions as well. They can learn how things work. So if they're building blocks up and pushing it down, they know, oh, this is that cause and effect. If I push it, it's gonna fall. They can learn problem solving and regulation, like I said. So if there's conflict between peers, conflict between siblings, you know, they get to learn, okay, those sharing skills, know how to de-escalate a situation and know how to calm themselves down, you know, if that's, you know, they have to share and they don't want to. Okay, well, let's calm our bodies, let's revisit this in a different light. They can understand symbolism with, you know, exploring their imagination, being creative. They can learn to take the perspective of others and shift dynamically. So knowing, oh, so-and-so doesn't want to play this with me, but they want to play something else. Okay, let's shift, and still being able to continue that play. And they can start to understand those social hierarchies and how to use those coping skills. So understand, you know, that like they can still take deep breaths, they can shift to a different activity, if, you know, by following the rules, that now rules are expected and they need to follow them. So to promote healthy development, we're going to skip the earlier years. But what's important for our students and your children is to continue promoting certain skills. And these skills are, one, if you haven't done so, is to keep reading with your child daily. So this is going to increase that vocabulary and their receptive vocabulary, expressive vocabulary. And this is where, at this point in time, you want to encourage them to take a lead in choosing on what they read books or what books they're reading. So this would be, you know, you're providing different options and giving them some of that independence of, okay, I kind of want to explore my different interests. I don't want to read Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I want to read, you know, about marine animals. You know, giving them, I don't know what children are reading marine animals at that time, but you know, you get the gist of, you know, they get some autonomy in knowing that they can explore their interest. You can let them learn on their own, engage them with that reading, ask them those questions, and have that engaged, you know, cooperative time. You can encourage them to share their experiences with you daily, and then show interest and pride in their activity. So this is, you know, even if they're at home, it's, hey, what did you play today? What did you do? And engaging in that conversation to promote that communication. And also, our children are, you know, they're brighter than we give them credit for, and they're the best lie detectors. So they can pick up on our vocabulary and our tone. So it's also, you know, be honest and show that pride and interest in what they're doing. Praise them for when they're being independent and showing those skills of like, hey, you went to the bathroom without being asked, like that's awesome. Or hey, you chose your shoes for today. You chose rain boots when it's raining. That's fantastic. Encourage that, you know, them dressing independently, them eating on their own, you know, cleaning up spills if something's spilt, and helping around the house, even if it's, you know, the small things, picking up their toys, tidying up the living room. And also an important one is also limit their screen time. So this is TV, tablet time, video games, and exposure to like movies, prolonged movies, so that they can learn through play. I know it's for many parents, you know, you're working, you're busy, the family dynamic is different, And sometimes it's easier to just, while we cook dinner, you play on the tablet for a while. But it's important, we have that balance. Life is about balance, that we're also engaging in them and providing different activities where they can explore their imagination, be creative, and have different alternatives in the home.
Just a super quick note about like building their independence, right? I know myself, it's really hard sometimes to like be like, okay guys, let's go, we're gonna do this, we're gonna do this quick, and we're gonna do it neatly, right? But it is really important for our kids to get that practice, right? If they're gonna carry their plate to the sink or grab their plate, right? They might drop it, they might spill, there might be messes, they might not do it very quickly, but it is such a critical skill for them, right? To be able to do those things independently, right? Them to be able to pick out their own outfit, get themselves dressed. They might not match. That's okay. They did it themselves and they can take pride in that, right? And so sometimes it's about us letting go of some of our own control, knowing that there's gonna be skill pills, knowing that it's gonna take longer, knowing that it's not gonna be done the way you would do it, but they are building that independence, right? And that is so important for them to be able to do that, right? Because you want them to be able to feed themselves, right? They might make a mess, but if they haven't had that practice in your home, right, then they're gonna come here and they'll be making a mess here, and it's okay, they'll get it cleaned up, right? But as much practice as they can get in the home before they come to school is huge for them, right? Being able to get their shoes on by themselves, right? Being able to pull up their pants and button them if they can, or just pull up their pants, pull down their pants. Those are all really good independent skills, and again, they take time, and even if there's times in their day where you're like, nope, I'm gonna be doing this one for you, but if you can build in time for your kids to get that independence, it's huge. So.
Yes. And then just to build off for those 4 to 5 years, again, keep reading daily. Let your child tell you the story, so now give them that practice of telling you the story, pointing out to different letters and pictures. An additional one too is you can start visiting the public library. I don't live in Sanger, so I don't know if the Sanger Library is free. I hope it is. I think it is. And if you have a library in your own home too, it's start mixing it up for them. Like Mrs. Flores said, you want to praise for those, like being able to do those skills independently. Praise them for good choices, and you can promote the value of empathy, like caring for others, kindness. And you can also help your child understand how their behavior impacts others. So like those, the outcome behaviors, if we make the good choice, this is what could happen. If we make a not so good choice, this is also what could happen. You could also, again, give your child simple household chores, even if it's just putting the dishes in the sink, putting the toys in the toy bin, putting the shoes back in the closet, things like that to help promote more, further develop that independence. And around this age, children might start asking questions. So be prepared for those difficult questions about babies, justice, fairness, even spirituality, religion, etc. The list goes on. So it's important to keep your answers short. And again, they can notice a lot of how we talk. So it's, again, also being able to know how to balance the truth with them. And then a short message about media use. Again, we live in a technological age, so I understand it's completely, it's a struggle. It's a struggle for everyone, but it's important for our students to, again, like I said, balance that screen time with other alternative activities, whether it's coloring, reading, going outside to play. You could also choose different shows, videos, or applications that match your child's age and interest. And also, just a very quick note, you have to be very careful of different shows and things in media that say that they're educational, because unfortunately we can't screen everything, and some of those things are not educational. So it's also important to take a moment, take some time to also engage with your child and see what they're looking at, see what they're watching, whether it's on YouTube, Netflix, whatever service you use. but to take the time to actually understand and see what they're doing. Make screen time social. So if you have FaceTime, Skype, WhatsApp, whatever it may be, you could also use screen time to talk with a family member, have them communicate, build those skills. You can sit with your child and have, point things out like, oh, what are they doing? Make it a conversation. And also think about your own habits. You are your children's first teachers, you're their first role models. So if they see you, engage more time on screen time, it's something that they could pick up on too. So again, but life's about balance. So it's just some things to consider. And an important part, I know we talked a lot about the milestones, where your children should be at, some of those red flags as well. So now that you know some of the things to look out for, and you might have some questions about it, what can we do about it now? So the importance is early identification. So you have any concerns, so if you filled out any areas within that handout and you have concerns of where your children are not at the moment, what's important is to know that if you have these concerns is to speak up to the appropriate people. So your pediatrician would be an excellent person to start with. But also, since they're coming to school, is also talking to your school teams to provide early intervention rather than just, we're going to wait and see, they might grow out of this. And they might, this might be just very temporary, but it's best to bring it up to, your pediatrician's attention, your school team's attention, just so that we're all in the same loop. And speaking of your pediatrician, sorry. Oh, then never mind. Then just talking with your school team very briefly, it would just be, this is where you would hold a student support team meeting. This will bring your administrators, teacher, and just bringing up those concerns of what to look out for. And if your child is identified as having needs, this is where the school team, including yourself, will make an effort to provide those early intervention services. So screeners might have already been done, but this is where we now provide, those extra supports to help them, whether it's language and communication, whether it's cognitive development or behavior, or also those fine gross motor skills. So we could bring in like occupational therapy services as well. But also know that even though your child may receive services, it doesn't mean that they will need them forever. This is just something that we want to, we want to bridge that gap that we're seeing. We want to make sure that we can provide that intervention early to make sure that, we're closing that gap as soon as we can, and help your student become successful moving forward. And we just have some local resources for you that are provided within the county. So we have the Central Valley Regional Center that you could reach out for some of those intervention services. I will say though, if you have concerns, they do have a wait list, so reach out as soon as possible if you are concerned for your child. We also have Exceptional Parents Unlimited. They're a great organization that helps support parents and families and help them connect to whoever they need and support services. We have Valley Children's, of course, and also within Sanger, we have our Family Resource Center, where we have our migrant education program. We also, they also host parenting classes in English and in Spanish to help support, your needs and your students' needs, and also provide different other resources as well.
All right, we'll turn it over to our talk team, our basic meetings, to go through the journey.
Okay, so hi everybody. I know some of you kind of stepped in a little bit later, but my name is Angelina Duarte. I am a board certified behavior analyst. So if you're not familiar with that, we are the ones that kind of come in. We mentioned the SST meetings, so that is your student support team. When you guys have either skill or behavioral concerns with your student, you can call for those meetings. And usually if we're not able to figure out a solution in that situation, we kind of get called in. We work directly with your school psychologists. We help observe your students. We help assess your students as well. And in some cases, we also help develop those individualized strategies, schedules, reinforcement plans, or in some cases, a behavior intervention plan for your student so that we can start seeing some of those excess or inappropriate school behaviors reduce, and then see more of those engagement and participation skills increase. We do directly work actually for the TALK team, or TALK ABA, and we're contracted in for Sanger Unified. And we kind of circle around throughout your district, so you may or may not see us if you guys need us. For today, though, we are going to be talking about toilet training. So for our toilet training overview, we are going to be looking at some of those readiness signs. So how are you guys going to be able to tell whether your child is ready to start that journey of toilet training? We're also going to go through some basic how-to strategies in regards to toilet training, as well as the importance of an individualized approach with your child, because each child is different and unique, and so we're all going to learn a little bit differently, or maybe need a little bit more time or patience. Oh, there's... Alrighty, so things to consider. So we did go over quite a bit of the developmental milestones, and just a small reminder that ages for toilet training do vary a little bit. So typically around that 24 months, so 2 years of age, we do start seeing some of those signs that they are aware of needing to go to the bathroom. Maybe they're starting to show you kind of that potty dance, or doing those kind of things, or showing maybe some discomfort when their pull-up or their diaper is soaked. And then on average, it's usually around 3 years of age that children are typically toilet trained for day. And then it's around 4 years old where we start to see some of that independence with being able to stay dry at night. However, we do want to consider that some friends do have medical issues as well as other developmental diagnoses that may kind of reduce whether or not your child is able to kind of hit that 3 or 4 year milestone. So just as a reminder that children with disabilities do often take a little bit longer to reach this milestone, but that's okay. There are many things to consider with friends with disabilities, especially when we think about like the sensory issues with learning how your body works, how that feels, and then also learning how the toilet works. That can be also very scary. So we're just going to go over some of the skills that your child should generally have when they're coming into TK or kinder when they start with us. So specifically for independence, we are looking for generally being able to, again, have that communication to kind of indicate to the teacher or to the para, I need to go potty, or I need to use the restroom now. Of course, TK and kinder, they are going to have those hour to 2 hour reminders from staff, but with the reminders, they should be able to let us know, like, yes, I do need to go, and then go ahead and navigate to that. Another one that we want to make sure is that they are starting to show signs that they are able to remove and put on their clothing by themselves, as well as that they are able to independently wipe after voiding. So something with TK and kinder, if your friends are going into general ed, staff do not go into the restrooms with them unless they need help, say with like their buckles or something like that, or maybe they might need help pushing the flush down because it might be a hard button, or they might need some help with turning on or off the sink. So like I said, some assistance for traveling to the restroom with those reminders is okay, as well as needing to turn on and off the sink is also all right. But for the safety and independence of your child, we do want to ensure that they have those independent skills already kind of established when they're coming here to school. And if not, that's definitely something to talk to your SST team about, and something that you might want to discuss with the nurse if your friend needs a little bit more assistance when they come into TK or kinder. And then of course, using the paper towel dispenser. Some schools have different ones. Some have the crank, some have the pull. They're a little bit difficult sometimes, and so needing that assistance is also okay. and of course buckling and zipping close. So the readiness signs that you guys are looking for as parents from your children are the following. So it's quite a few. So we are looking for, when they do become wet, we're really looking for that uncomfortableness. Are they starting to kind of trying to take off their pull-up themselves? Are they starting to change themselves or show that kind of interest, again, discomfort in being wet? Are you also noticing that maybe they're staying drier for longer? So one of the key signs is our friends being able to stay dry for a minimum of 2 hours or longer. That's a pretty good sign that your friend has strong enough muscles down there to be able to hold themselves for longer periods. So it does show that they're able to toilet train at that point. Another one is the hiding to urinate. So that's another social sign that they're starting to make that connection that going to the bathroom is a private activity. And so they start doing that kind of hiding, going someplace else, going to a different room to go to the bathroom in their diaper away from you. Another one is showing interest in you going to the restroom. That's something that is a good way of kind of introducing those toileting skills and modeling that behavior for your child, as well as building that skill so that they're not scared of the bathroom or the toilet when it's then their time to be sitting on the john, essentially. The next one is we do want to see that they are able to independently navigate their way to the restroom. So friends that have motor deficits, that's one of those medical skills that we would have to kind of work on and establish or come up with an alternative plan so that they can independently get to the restroom so that they can do that themselves. Another one is we do want to ensure that they're able to follow at least 1 to 2 step instructions. So that's stand up, put your pants on, go to the sink, wash your hands. I've kind of gone over those ones. Again, we want to see that they don't like being wet, that they're willing to go to the restroom with you, as well as they're starting to kind of help you with the changing process, right? Maybe they're taking off the snaps for you, or they're trying to take the wipes from you and do it quickly so that they can be done. Those are all signs that we're looking for, that they're showing you that they're ready to do that. So preparing for success. So one of the key things that we've found is that creating a consistent routine for your child usually has higher success in being able to potty train quickly, as well as then being able to transition that over to a new environment, which would be school. So one thing we suggest is creating visual supports. So toilet icons, pictures, charts, creating social stories. So those are those little pottying stories or videos that you can find on YouTube or find free ones on Google, to really start reading those to your children to introduce that language and that process to them in a non-scary way. The next one is we do want to make sure that we're encouraging communication. So I kind of spoke about modeling those toileting behaviors with your children. So making sure we're kind of language flooding, right? Oh, we're wet. That means you went to the bathroom. So we're dirty. We need to change. Sometimes we go to the bathroom in the toilet. Like, look, this is how I go. And like, kind of doing that conversation, that communication with them really helps kind of, again, make them comfortable with the whole process. So again, we also want to consider medical limitations when you're creating these routines for your friends. If your friend has more motor issues, or maybe you're dealing with a medical issue called compaction, where your friend is holding and not eliminating, we might need to work more closely with your pediatrician to develop a more appropriate routine for your child. So here is actually an example of a toileting schedule. So typically what we would suggest is that you guys start to observe and monitor and record your children. So if you're noticing all of those kind of grouping of signs that your friend might be ready, what we suggest is that you kind of start logging when your child is wet versus when they are dry. So typically parents will start off at our center kind of taking a log where they're checking their child approximately every hour to 2 hours and making a log, wet, dry, wet, dry. And then this way, after about a week of observing your child, we kind of can start to see a pattern of their body clock because all of us are different. And so you might start to notice that, hey, you know what? My child isn't wet at 6:30 when I wake them up, but they're always wet at 8:30. Well, the first time I'm going to take them to the restroom then might be 8 o'clock to try to catch them before they go ahead and have their natural void, right? So that's kind of a suggestion just so you guys are able to see generally what time frames would be the best time for me to try to toilet train my child. Because of course we're all really, really busy. You can't just stand there, you know, every single day. So this is gonna help you guys kind of plan out strategically when you guys can target that toilet training and trying to prompt your child to sit on the toilet. So again, going through those consistent schedules. So you wanna think about the times of the days that you guys are needing to go. Again, if they are usually wet every 2 hours, then you would wanna take them at that 1.5 hour mark. Again, we're trying to catch their body clock naturally so that they then naturally have that void or that pressure already built up in their tummy. So it's easier for them to have that success. Another one is you do want to make sure that if you have started that potty training process, you get everybody involved. Grandma, grandpa, cousins, aunts, uncles, siblings, anybody that is going to be there with your child and involved, you want to make sure that if you're taking your child every 3 hours to the toilet, Grandma and Grandpa are gonna take them every 3 hours to the toilet for you, okay? And that's just so, again, when we stick to that consistent routine, it helps train our body and our body muscles so that toileting becomes easier. Another method that we'd like to suggest that is sometimes used in our clinic when we're supporting parents with toilet training is the process of 5 minutes on, 10 minutes off. So what this is for parents that don't have as much time to be able to maybe collect data on their child and do this long process of doing the routine, which might take a week, maybe more, to train your child. Some parents choose to do what's called a potty party, which is a 1 to 2 day process where you spend the entire day with your child and you do what's called the 5 minutes on and 10 minutes off. So what this is you essentially prep your child and pump them full of yummy juice, like apple juice and stuff like that, and give them salty crackers or goldfish to essentially prompt their body to be ready to eliminate. And what you do is you kind of make the bathroom a fun play place. All of their toys are in there because we're gonna be spending the entire day in the restroom with 5 minutes sitting on the toilet, playing with a toy, and then 10 minutes where they get to rest and come off the toilet, play with their toys, do whatever they need to do. And then after that 10 minutes is done, you place them back on the toilet for 5 minutes. It is very intense, but I have had actually quite a bit of success with this one for, again, parents that don't have very much time or need to potty train very quickly. This has been shown to be pretty successful. So here's another example of some of the pictures or schedules that we kind of sometimes make for our friends. So sometimes it's as simple as a communication icon, so the big toilet. Some of our friends, if your friend is having difficulty communicating, sometimes using pictures to indicate what they need or want is a great way to, again, prompt them to do that exchange, that independent indication that I need to go to the restroom, please take me. And then, of course, a visual indicator for toilet training. So that's an example of showing your child, hey, it's time to go try. And we're even going to do a toilet sitting visual. So look, we need to sit on the toilet for 10 seconds. And you would sit there and count with your child until it's time to get up and then go through all of that process. So now we're going to go through the components of successful potty training with Miss Jerica.
Thank you, ma'am. All right. Some of this will be repeated of what Angelina had said, because she touched up on a few. But when we think of components of successful potty training, we want to think of choosing a goal. So where are we at with our child, and what goal do we want to set for them? Choosing the reward, because we want to make sure we are rewarding our children for the hard work that they're doing. Getting a good idea of what they really like, and honestly what they don't get often, because what they don't get often they're going to like even more. So keeping that in mind. Making sure you guys have the appropriate materials that you need before potty training. So that could be underwear, pull-ups, kind of whatever you guys prefer to begin with. Toileting seats, decorating the restroom to make it fun and exciting for them. And again, those rewards. So make sure if you have something in mind of what you'd like to reward them with, that you have that prepared and ready as well. This is something Angelina spoke about as well, but just the consistency. So when we're setting up potty training and we have their goal, we have their reward, we have what we're wanting to, what we're expecting our child to do, we want to make sure that it is communicated throughout whoever may be caring for your child at that time, whether that be a daycare provider or grandma and grandpa, just making sure mom and dad are both on the same page. The consistency is going to be really important during this time. And of course the time. So I've seen this happen where parents hold off on potty training until spring break because they know they have that whole week off of work, so they're gonna start then. Or maybe they know they have some vacation time coming up, so maybe they're gonna start during that time, because some of us are working parents. So just making sure that you have the time to really sit down and implement the potty training with your child. When we think of a goal for our child, we want to get an idea of where they're currently at with potty training. I know personally for me and my daughter, she would occasionally go. She would be excited to go sit on the potty. Okay, then my goal for her wasn't starting to just tolerate sitting on the potty. My goal for her was, now we're going to try to implement using underwear, right? So if your child's not quite there yet, if your child just has a hard time tolerating the restroom because the flushing is loud and those automatic faucets are scary, that might be your goal to start off with, just them tolerating going into a restroom, tolerating sitting on the toilet for a certain amount of time. So again, tailoring that goal to your child in particular. Yes, the readiness skills as well. So maybe it's just pulling down your pants to start and then you helping them get on the potty. Again, keeping in mind of where they're at skill-wise to make sure you're setting those goals. And then focusing on one at a time. So if the goal is just for them to sit on the potty, we're going to reward them for sitting. Whether they voided or didn't void, if the goal is to just start off with them tolerating sitting on that big scary bowl that's as big as them, then you want to make sure you're rewarding that behavior and just focusing on that goal and waiting a little bit before you maybe progress into actually focusing on them voiding or going into the potty. For rewards, you want to make sure they're specific to your child. Make sure that they're specific to that experience. You want to make sure that whatever reward you're providing them is immediate. The more immediate that reward is, the more they're making that connection like, oh, I just went pee-pee. Like, honestly, as soon as they're voiding, I would, if it's a Skittle, give them one right away. You want to make sure that it's not delayed. So it's not like, oh, first go potty and then we can go get ice cream later tonight. You want to make sure it is immediate so they're making that connection and they're reinforced very quickly and they understand that I did this and I get this right away. That trust component is very important, right, between you and your child. So if you say something, you want to make sure you follow through with it. And it's way easier when that reinforcement or reward is immediate. Because if you mention ice cream at night, but something happens, and it's going to be really hard for them to rebuild that trust when they reach that big goal that you were setting for them. And making sure it's easy to give and easy to take away. So one thing I struggled with personally working in the clinic setting with a student who I was potty training, or a client I was potty training, he really enjoyed the iPad. And so mom was like, let's use some iPad time as reinforcement.
great, let's do it. He had a really hard time getting away from the iPad when he was done, so quickly realized that that was easy to give, but not easy to take away. So just keeping that in mind too. I had mentioned it earlier, but just making sure that whatever you're using for the reward, it's not something they get all the time also. So if you're a family that may not be big with sugar in the household, maybe a mini chocolate chip might be the way to go. Something small, something they don't get often. It's gonna get them really excited. The chances of them reaching that goal that you're setting for them by using that as a reward, it's very high. Here are some examples of some of the rewards that you could use, from small items to social time. One thing that personally my daughter enjoyed was a FaceTime call to Nama and Papa, her grandma and grandpa, and we celebrated. They were so proud of her. She loves the social attention. So being able to understand that about my daughter and knowing that maybe that was going to be what's going to be her reward for potty training because she enjoys that so much is the way to go. Again, the little treats like M&Ms, Skittles, you can even fill up a little treasure box with maybe some Dollar Tree little toys that they can pick and choose from. Nothing too pricey, of course, because we all know how often we urinate and use the restroom. That is how often you are going to be giving them that reward. And especially if you're doing the 5 minutes on and 10 minutes off schedule, your pockets might be a little empty by the end of the day. So keeping that in mind. So setup and materials, you just want to make sure that it's a positive experience for your child. Things can turn very quickly. An example of this was we had a client who accidentally fell off of the potty, bumped his head, and next thing you know, he was like, I don't want anything to do with that toilet. That toilet is mean, it's a monster. No, thank you. So just making sure that in the restroom itself that it's a positive experience, making sure that you guys can even model for them, like, look, mommy's, sitting on the potty, mommy's doing this, having a good time, things are working out great. Making the transitions to the bathroom fun too. So, hey, it's potty time. Do you want to get a piggyback ride to the potty or race to the potty? Those are some good ideas as well. I've known some folks to even put up pictures of, let's say your kiddo loves Bluey, then making a Bluey bathroom, posting pictures of Bluey or their favorite characters or favorite things, reading books of their favorite characters maybe while sitting on the potty, singing songs while sitting on the potty if they enjoy singing and dancing. Providing them those choices will be super important. That way they feel that sense of control in the restroom as well. So while we sit, do you want to sing Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star, or do you want to read a book? So making sure that they feel like they have some control in the restroom. Other supports, I know Angelina mentioned the social stories. You could definitely tailor these to your child's experience. That's really exciting. There's templates and stuff online. So if your child's name is John, you could talk about John's turn to use the potty. You can use pictures of the potty John's going to be using or your restroom in your house, and make it into a little story for your child so that they understand kind of the ins and outs of potty training, but also they get excited about it. I mentioned allowing the child to accompany the parent to the restroom and you being that example for them. I would also say in those moments where you are that example, you can also provide that reward to yourself. So if it is a mini chocolate chip, you can show them, look, mommy went potty, mommy's gonna get that chocolate chip, so that they're making that connection of what they need to do in that reward. Setup and materials, so there's so many different toileting seats and portable toilets that you can use for your child. You want to keep in mind the different foot placements, whatever is comfortable for your kiddo. Personally, at the top right, I started off using that one with my child because I noticed that she was not getting to the toilet quick enough because our playroom was far away from our bathroom. And so when it was time to go potty, we would sit that little portable toilet right outside in the hallway of her playroom, and she would just walk right outside and be able to use it quicker in that way. And then sooner or later, we faded it closer and closer to the restroom, where then she was able to go to the restroom to use the toilet. That's also a great potty to use if your child is sensitive to the bigger toilets, and utilizing toilet seats that way. And just important to note too that if your child has low muscle tone, make sure you're consulting with a physical therapist or an occupational therapist to get some kind of adaptive equipment for them to use to support them sitting. That often involves the feet placement and all that good stuff. Clothing to use. So sometimes we don't think about this. I know I didn't. So we want to make sure we steer away from clothing with zippers or that's hard to button. Clothing that's tight on them. We want to make sure that they're using things with like a drawstring waistband, loose fitting clothes, maybe using skirts or dresses. And then something that usually isn't thought about, but our shoes. Because unfortunately, when little ones urinate, especially standing up, it tends to go down and right into their shoes. So making sure that when you do start this process, they are using shoes that are easy to remove, easy to clean on your guys' end. It would, really pay off in the long run. During this potty training process, if you guys happen to be traveling or happen to be heading to grandma and grandpa's for the weekend, whatever that might look like, just making sure that you're, again, staying consistent. So making sure that all the items and things you use in your house, you're taking them with you on the go, including the rewards. I'm a big reward person, so make sure your rewards are there and they are ready to be used and on hand. And then making sure that you can use different materials to make sure that the toilet that they are going to be using is comfortable for them. So whether that be bringing a little seat, bringing the actual portable toilet. And I brought it up earlier, but some sensory issues to consider. Again, restrooms and toilets can be so scary for our little ones. So this is a great example of something that I was taught. Bringing a sticky note to cover the sensor on automatic toilets was really helpful for the little ones. My daughter, I think one of her first words was automatic because she knew what an automatic toilet was because she was terrified of it. And I taught her to rip a piece of toilet paper off of the roll first, cover the sensor, and then go to the bathroom. And it really helped her become more independent, and it was a lot less scary for her to use that. Same with the automatic, like hand soaps and the faucets, the paper towel dispensers. Again, those are all really scary sometimes. So I'm just making sure you guys are prepared beforehand. You can also utilize the noise canceling headphones if necessary. Bathrooms tend to echo and it tends to get really loud sometimes, so making sure that again, if you're in this potty training process, you don't want to make it harder on them, or you don't want to make that process aversive, so you want to make sure that it's still enjoyable and you guys are just covering those sensory issues if needed. And then don't forget just to stay positive and patient. It is a journey. It does take a long time. Make sure you guys celebrate every small milestone that you guys encounter. The consistency and routine will be super helpful for them. And then just make sure to try and be as flexible as possible because every child is different. So if one thing didn't work, don't give up completely. We can try another route. So yeah. And if you guys have your phones, there's a QR code for some resources if you'd like to utilize that.
Yeah, this is a folder we created for you guys, so it already has some of those schedules or those little communication slips already printed for you guys, so that you guys can take them home and print them for yourselves to use with your children. So please do utilize it if you need it. I also want to suggest, I think we forget about it, but Pinterest is also a really great place to go for making toilet training fun. So I know
Okay. So while they activate that QR code, I just wanted to go over some immunizations for TK and give opportunity for any questions. So what you need to know as far as immunizations that your student needs in order to be ready to start school in the fall is obviously the California law requires that all students entering TK have documented immunizations or valid exemptions in order to be before admission. And again, that is because vaccinations help protect students and the broader community from vaccine preventable diseases. The vaccine requirements specifically are the diphtheria, tetanus, and pertussis, or DTaP. For kindergarten or TK, it is 5 doses, and then polio, which is, you might see it on your card as IPV, 4 doses, hepatitis B, 3 doses, measles, mumps, rubella, or MMR, 2 doses, and then varicella, the chickenpox, 2 doses. Some of them might vary depending on when the age was when the last dose was given, but these are generally the requirements for TK. Special considerations for younger TK. So this year we are registering students who, they need to be 4 years old for TK by September 1st. So that means that we do have students that are going to be starting TK at 3 years old. The immunizations that I mentioned in the last slide, those are their 4-year immunizations. So the doctors won't give them those last set of immunizations until they're actually 4 years old. So for that reason, we do have some special considerations for our younger TKers starting school. So basically, when you're getting them registered right now, if they're still 3 years old, then we're going to be going by the pre-K, preschool immunization requirements. And so, and then basically your student is going to be admitted conditionally on the condition that basically when they turn 4 years old, then parents do get their immunizations updated so that they're then compliant with the recommendations. So that means that there are some, so if your student turns 4 over the summer, please make sure that you get the last set of immunizations so that they're ready to go that first day of school. Our nurses will be checking that before the first day of school. If your student happens to have a birthday, our first day of school is August 20th. So if your student happens to turn 4 between August 20th and September 1st, then obviously they're going to start school without those immunizations because they're not old enough yet. But as soon as they turn 4, then we do need them to have those immunizations updated. Hib, which is something you might see on your student's immunization record, is an influenza type B vaccine that's required for preschool, but not for TK. As far as, so we kind of already went over this in terms of conditionally admitted, and then when they turn 4, then you give us that documentation. And then accepted records, so obviously doctor's records that show the immunizations, California Immunization Registry, or CARE. You can, we can print that off of the computer, and you can as well. Or if you have the yellow immunization card or a blue immunization record, those are all examples of accepted records that we can take. As far as waivers and exemptions, this is something we do get a lot of questions on. There used to be, personal belief waivers and different things like that. As of January 1st, 2021, I believe, in California, there's only one way that we can accept immunization waivers, and that is through that California Immunization Registry medical exemption. So basically that CareMe, which the link is right there, is the only way. So your doctor would start that request through that portal, stating for whatever reason that your student needs to be exempt from one vaccine or however many they feel, and then that information goes directly to the state of California, and there is a board that reviews that, and they are the ones who grant whether or not there is going to be an exemption. So we can't accept anything from any other states, because it has to be the doctor who gives you the exemption has to be board certified and practicing
in the state of California in order for it to be valid. So those are the only ones that we can accept. So just so that you guys are aware of that. And then these are just some of the resources. So CDPH Shots for School is a really great website, has a lot of information there if you have any other questions. And then they also have an immunization handbook. And then I know it was mentioned earlier, but our Family Resource Center here in Sanger is a wonderful resource. We have had parents who are able to get help there. For example, sometimes people move into the area and their insurance is not moved to this area yet, like Medi-Cal or different things. They can kind of help people navigate through some of those things. So they've even gone as far as helping people put in applications and different things like that. And then certainly getting you connected. Our health offices can also give you ideas of local resources. There are different immunization clinics. We will be holding through the Fresno County Superintendent of Schools. They have a mobile health clinic that will be here before school starts at Washington Academic, our middle school, and they have their mobile unit that is going to be doing immunizations for students. So that is another opportunity that people have to come and get free immunizations for their students before the beginning of the school year. And that is it. So I don't know if anybody has any questions, but before we wrap up, I just want to make sure and give a shout out to our Community Day School, or CDS, that their media team made it possible for us to be able to telecast this presentation for those who may not have been able to be here in person. So thank you very much for your time and making that a possibility. And yeah, so if you have any questions for me or for any of the other panelists, please feel free to let us know.